Archaeologists say writings on an ancient tablet confirmed there was a global flood and an ark that carried animals.
Noah's Ark in Turkey isn't just an old boat in the dirt. It's a sealed prison full of things the world was never supposed to see again. Under the mountain, they didn't just find old wood and tablets. They found bones with wings, scrolls that spoke of creatures not human, and a glowing stone that pulses like a heartbeat. Tune in. Because the last thing they found, it was a door. And something alive was behind it. The shape in the mountain. Out in the rough lands of eastern Turkey, high up in the mountains, there's a place where the rocks don't look like they belong. Not just because they're old, because they look like something man-made, like something built. What lies buried beneath the dust could change everything we thought we knew about ancient history. For years, people had talked about it. A shape in the ground near Mount Ararat. It looked like a boat, a really big one. And not just any boat, one that matched the size of something from a book that's thousands of years old. That book? The Bible? That boat? Noah's Ark. This place is called the Durupunar site. It's long and wide and shaped like the kind of ship no one's ever built in modern times. And some folks think it's not just a weird shape in the dirt. They believe it's the real thing. The last place Noah's Ark ever touched before the floodwaters pulled back. For years, the shape sat there under rock, ice, and time. People walked by it, climbed around it, took pictures, measured it, argued about it. Was it real? Was it just a strange pile of rocks? Nobody knew for sure. But then a new team showed up. This team wasn't just made up of treasure hunters or Bible fans. It had scientists, archaeologists, tech experts, people who could look through the earth using tools, not guesses. They brought ground-penetrating radar, satellite scans, soil testers, all the stuff you'd need to search deep underground without digging up the whole mountain. And what they found under that boat-shaped mound made them freeze. Beams, rooms, walls, all buried under layers of time. The scans showed patterns, straight lines, right angles, long corridors. It looked like something made on purpose, something built. Suddenly, this wasn't just a rocky ridge anymore. This was something else, something big. And what came next shocked even the experts. They found wood, old, hard, blackened beams deep in the dirt. Pieces that looked like they'd once been cut and placed there by human hands. Wood, where there shouldn't be any unless something massive was buried. Tests were done. The wood had been carbon dated. That means scientists checked how old it was using science. The answer? Thousands of years old. Old enough to match the time of the flood, if the flood really happened. Then came the real surprise. They drilled into a chamber, a sealed space deep inside the shape. When they opened it up, it wasn't empty. Inside were strange objects, things that didn't belong in a cave, things that didn't look like tools or weapons. They looked ancient, sacred. There were tablets, flat stones with writing on them. Not modern writing, not even Roman or Greek. Something older, symbols, shapes, words no one could read at first. Some looked like stars, others looked like animals. A few showed boats, mountains, and rising water. A story written in stone. The team took pictures, they ran scans. They called in experts in old languages. And those experts said something wild. These writings weren't random, they were records, warnings. A story of a flood, a man, a boat, and creatures saved from the water. Not just one story, not just one line, but a whole timeline. Before, during, and after a great flood. It sounded like Noah's story. The symbols talked about the sky changing, about animals being loaded 2 by 2, about a long wait, about water that covered everything, about fear, hope, then dry land. And it didn't stop there. In one chamber there was water, still, cold, sealed away from the outside world. But this water wasn't normal. When scientists tested it, they found something strange. The molecules were arranged in patterns, tight, unusual, almost like the water had been structured, shaped by something more than just nature. Some believed it had special properties, healing properties. It wasn't just old, it was different. But the biggest shock was still waiting. Near the back wall of the chamber, packed in layers of frozen mud, they found something huge, something with thick bones, fossilized, preserved. At first, they thought it might be a mammoth, but it wasn't. It was a dinosaur. A dinosaur bone inside a ship-shaped object in a place some people say is Noah's Ark. That shouldn't be possible. Science says dinosaurs died out millions of years before people showed up. So how could a dinosaur bone be here, next to things from the time of Noah? The team was stunned. The world was stunned. If this was real, and many believed it was, it meant the timeline of Earth might be all wrong. It meant dinosaurs might have been on that boat. It meant the flood wasn't just a story, it was history. This changed everything, but it also raised questions. If Noah brought two of every kind, would that include dinosaurs? Could they have fit? Could they have survived? Some scientists said yes, if they were young, if they were small. It was possible, not easy, not likely, but possible. Others said it couldn't be. The bone must have been dragged there by mud, ice, time, not part of the Ark. But still, the bone was there. The scans were clear. The chambers were real. The artifacts, the water, the writing, all of it said one thing. This place mattered. Whether you believed it was Noah's Ark or not, the truth was clear. Something was buried in that mountain. But just when they thought the story couldn't go deeper, the next dig cracked open something even older, something buried not just in dirt, but in time. The Lost Scrolls and the Blood Rock. The mountain was quiet, but inside that ridge, everything had changed. The team had uncovered things no one expected. Wooden beams, carved tablets, strange water, and now a dinosaur bone sealed in stone. But that was just the start. They kept digging, careful, slow. Every layer peeled back a new piece of the past. Then came the scrolls. Tucked deep in a stone shelf under thick mud and dried clay, the crew found rolls of something that looked like parchment. Thin, fragile, brown, beige. It crumbled at the edges, but inside, it held tight. The scrolls were wrapped in something like waxed cloth, pressed shut, sealed with symbols, old ones. Some looked like suns, some like eyes. One looked like a mountain cracking in half. They didn't touch them with bare hands. They scanned, photographed, then sent samples to a lab nearby. And what the lab found made jaws drop. The material was older than any scroll they had tested before. Older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. Older than the pyramids. Possibly older than written history itself. But the words on the scrolls were even more shocking. Some lines matched ancient Hebrew, others didn't. Some used a script almost forgotten, maybe pre-flood writing. But a few words stood out, clear and strong. Words like judgment, flood, ark, fire, escape. And one word kept repeating again and again. Covenant. The scrolls didn't tell a happy story. They spoke of warnings. A time when people stopped listening. A time when darkness filled the world. Where something rose from the earth. Something not human. One scroll told of voices from the sky. Another spoke of strange stars that blinked in patterns. One described dreams full of fire and water, given to a man who lived on the mountain. These were not bedtime stories. These were ancient alarms. Then came something else, something that didn't look like paper or wood or bone. It looked like a stone, but not just any stone. The crew called it the Blood Rock. It was round, about the size of a basketball, but it wasn't smooth. It had cracks running through it, and from every crack a red liquid had dried long ago. It looked like it had bled. When they touched it, static ran up their arms. Cameras around the site glitched. The air got heavy. The rock didn't belong in a ship. not in any kind of normal way. But it was inside the chamber, set on a pedestal, as if someone placed it there on purpose. And there was something else. Under the blood rock, they found a symbol carved into the stone base, a circle with wings. Inside the circle, a tree, and beside the tree, a small set of lines that looked like DNA. That's when people started asking, was this just a holy object or something more? Some believed the blood rock was symbolic, representing sacrifice or life. Others said it could be something alive or used for something, maybe even part of why the Ark had lasted this long. Tests on the rock's surface found rare minerals not seen in the region. Some of the material was magnetic. Some wasn't even on the periodic table. Whatever it wasn't from around here. And then came the part no one could explain. 2 members of the team had strange dreams the night after they worked near the blood rock. Both dreamed of giant waves crashing over mountains. Both saw fire falling from the sky. Both heard a deep voice saying the same thing. It will happen again. Was it just fear or something more? Meanwhile, at the surface, news of the Ark discovery had spread. Reporters, skeptics, believers. They all showed up. The Turkish government sent guards. Drones watched the sky. Nobody wanted the site damaged. Nobody wanted to miss what came next. Then the digging hit another layer. A second chamber, lower than the first. Sealed tighter. Harder to reach, but the scan showed it was filled with shaped blocks. Rows of something. Something organized. When they finally cracked it open, they gasped. It was a room full of cages. Most were empty. Just iron bars and old ropes. Some had what looked like feeding trays. Some had bones, small ones, possibly birds. Maybe something else. But one cage was different. In the back corner was a pile of dried moss, feathers, and twisted twine. And in the middle of that pile was an egg. An egg, fossilized, hardened like stone. But inside, the scan showed shapes, coiled, fragile, almost like they were preserved. The team didn't know what creature it came from. It wasn't any bird known today, not even close. Its claws were curved, its bones had small wings, and its skull, shaped like something between a hawk and a lizard. Some whispered the word dragon. Others said pterosaur. Either way, it shouldn't be here. But it was. Another find, another mystery. And outside, thunder rolled over the mountains, as if the land itself didn't want this stuff uncovered. Down below, the crew kept working, but some started wearing crosses. Others carried scriptures in their pockets. No one said it out loud, but they all felt the same thing. Something had been buried for a reason, and now it was waking up. And yet, even with all they had found, wood, bones, scrolls, and strange stone, there was still more hiding underneath. Something waiting, just below their feet, beneath the Ark. What started as a strange shape in the dirt had become a full-blown mystery. The Ark-shaped structure had chambers inside, wooden beams, ancient scrolls, a dinosaur bone, a fossilized egg, and that strange blood rock that made tech break and people dream of doom. But what the crew found next shook them harder than anything before. They drilled deeper, not through rock, through something hollow, a space underneath the main floor of the Ark. The radar showed a large open area, and in the middle, a spiral shape. It didn't look like a natural cave. It looked built. When they broke through and dropped a light inside, the truth hit fast. Stairs, not smooth ones like in castles. These were rough, worn down by time, but clearly made by hands, not nature. A spiral staircase twisting down into darkness. They lowered a camera. The feed showed what looked like carved stone. The walls had markings, lines, animals, suns, and something else. A strange figure stood deep in the shadows. It had large wings that stretched out on both sides, but there was no face, just emptiness, where the face should be. The crew stared in silence. No one said a word at first. They all felt something was wrong. The air felt heavier. The room seemed colder. They had a choice to make. Should they go in? Was it smart? Was it safe? No one knew. But in the end, they all agreed. They had come this far. This place was part of the ARK, or somehow connected to it. That meant they had to explore. 3 crew members got ready. They tied ropes to their belts and turned on their flashlights. Slowly, they climbed down into the darkness. Their boots scraped against stone. The sound echoed through the tunnel like whispers. They didn't speak. Every breath felt loud. Every step made them more unsure of what they'd find. At the bottom, they stepped into a round chamber. The air was still, cold. The kind of cold that gets into your bones. Right in the middle of the room sat a stone slab. It looked like a table, but much larger. The top was covered in a thick layer of dust and bones. The bones weren't human. They were strange and twisted. Some were small, like birds. Some were shaped like cats. One looked like a crocodile, but with long horns. Another had wings and patches of what looked like fur. All of them had been placed carefully, like someone had arranged them on purpose. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. Behind the slab, the wall was painted with deep red markings. They weren't letters. They weren't numbers. They were pictures. The flood was there, giant waves swallowing boats. Fire fell from the sky. Mountains cracked open. Stars rained down. One image showed up more than any other. A single giant eye, always floating above, always watching. The team took photos and scanned every inch of the room. Then they called the rest of the crew. Back at the base, people stared at the pictures in silence. Whispers filled the room. Someone finally spoke what everyone was thinking. This wasn't just an ARK. It wasn't just a boat made to carry life. It was something more. This was a vault, but not for treasure, not for gold. This vault held something else. Maybe it stored history. Maybe it was a place made to warn others. Some even said it might be sacred, meant to keep something powerful hidden, or dangerous. While the others talked, the crew below made another discovery. Behind the main chamber was a narrow hallway. They followed it slowly. At the very end, they found a stone door. It wasn't placed there like a block. It had been carved to fit perfectly, like it belonged there. They didn't open it right away. First they scanned it. Behind the stone was another room, and inside that room, something gave off a faint glow. It wasn't from a light bulb. It wasn't fire. It was something different, something soft and strange. It glowed green and blue, like the moon shining underwater. Without wasting more time, they pried the stone door open. The glow lit the space ahead. They stepped into a room that felt like a power center, but not the kind found in modern buildings. The walls were lined with sharp, clear shapes. Crystals, some shaped like hexagons, others like octagons. Some were cracked, but others pulsed softly with that glowing light. The crystals hummed quietly, like they were alive. In the center of the room sat a large circular stone. Deep lines were carved into it. They twisted and crossed in patterns like a maze. Some parts looked like a map. Others looked like symbols or numbers. Raised dots were scattered across it, each one resting beside a line or a strange shape. One scientist leaned in closer and whispered the thought that chilled them all. It looked like a star map, but not one they had ever seen. The patterns didn't match Earth's night sky. The shapes were different. The stars were wrong. Then someone gasped. They pointed at the middle of the map. The dot at the center wasn't our sun. It was something bigger, older, a red giant star. The room went silent. Had someone built this before the flood? Had they seen other stars? Did they know more about space than we do today? Before anyone could ask more questions, the lights blinked out. Everything went black. Flashlights, scanners, dead. Nothing worked. For 3 long minutes, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was their breathing. Then slowly, the lights flickered back to life. But the room wasn't the same. The glowing crystals on the walls had shifted. Just a little. Just a few inches. But it was enough to change the map. The center dot had moved. One scientist pulled out a scanner and checked the glow. It wasn't just light. It was giving off radiation. Low, but real. The kind that doesn't come from rocks or dust. The kind that comes from something active, something alive, or worse, something watching. They didn't stay. They backed out of the room and sealed the door behind them. Back at the surface, one of the researchers dug through old books. He had studied ancient Mesopotamian myths, stories told of a great boat that carried more than animals. The ARK, he said, was meant to protect something else too, something secret, something not of this world. Maybe it was knowledge, maybe it was power, or maybe it was a prison. Outside, dark clouds began to build above the mountain. Wind picked up, radar scans started failing, the ground sensors began to blink. The machines picked up soft pulses under the surface. Thump, 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 like heartbeats. Fear spread through the camp. Some crew members wanted to leave, others were drawn deeper. They wanted to understand. They wanted answers. But no matter what side they were on, they all agreed on one thing. Something else was here, and the deeper they dug, the more it became clear. This ARK wasn't just from the past. It wasn't just a story told in old books. It was real, and it had something to say. A message, a warning, a truth locked away long ago, waiting to be opened. They thought they had reached the bottom, but the ARK wasn't done with them yet. A new door was waiting, one that felt like it had been sealed for a reason. The Forbidden Room. The mountain did not want to sleep. All night, the wind screamed over the rocks like a voice from another world. Cameras blinked out, radios filled with static. Deep inside the carved belly of the ARK, the team gathered around something new, something none of them had seen before. It was a door, but not like the others. It was not made from stone or cut wood. This one looked like it had been melted. Metal and timber fused together, like fire had shaped it. The edges were burned. The center was sealed shut, and there in the middle was a deep handprint. It looked like someone or something pressed their hand into the surface while it was still hot. There was no handle, no hinges, no lock or key, just that print, and a feeling in the air that warned them not to open it. But they tried anyway. They brought in heavy tools, laser cutters, even strong acid. Nothing worked. The door didn't budge. Then the youngest tech on the team, barely out of college, placed her hand over the burned print. She just wanted to see if it matched. That's when the door groaned. It didn't swing open. It folded inward, slowly, quietly. Behind it was a room filled with black air. No dust floated, no sound echoed. It felt like being deep underwater, heavy and still. They suited up with full gear, masks, lights, everything. Then they stepped inside. The chamber wasn't flat like the others. It was round. The ceiling curved like a dome, and hanging right in the middle was a strange sphere. It looked like glass or crystal. It spun slowly in the air, not touching anything, floating as if gravity didn't matter anymore. Inside that sphere was darkness. Not shadows, not dim light, just pure black. Their flashlights vanished into it. The darkness swallowed everything. And when they stared too long, they felt dizzy and sick, like the darkness was staring right back at them. The room's walls were covered in symbols, hundreds, maybe thousands. They spun around the inside like a ring. None matched any language known on Earth. Not Sumerian, not Hebrew, not even old star maps. But one symbol repeated over and over again. 2 arcs, one above, one below. And in the middle, a shape like a seed. Not a plant seed, a human one. It looked like a sign for life, or maybe rebirth. Then the sphere pulsed, just once, then again. and then it stopped. The team ran tests, checked the radiation, the pressure, the air. Everything pointed to the same idea. This thing wasn't just strange, it was alive, or it was tied to something that still was. They pulled back fast. Fear started to spread. Outside the room, arguments broke out. Some thought the sphere was holy, a sign from God. Others believed it was a weapon, or a memory, from something older than the world itself. They were still arguing when the ground shook. It wasn't a huge quake, just a rumble. But it only hit the mountain, nowhere else. The shaking came from right below the chamber. Scans showed a tunnel, deep, tight, twisting like a drill down into the rock. They didn't want to go. But in the end, 2 men and 1 woman geared up. They lowered themselves inch by inch into the shaft. Their lights shined on rock that hadn't seen light in thousands of years. At the bottom, they found another chamber. This one was different. The air was thick. Fog covered their suits. And the floor? It was glass, smooth, clear. And beneath it, they saw bones. A field of bones, thousands, maybe millions, arranged in a giant spiral, all reaching out from a pit in the center. Some bones were human, others were not. Some had long spines, extra arms, wings, skulls with too many eyes, or none at all. And at the center of it all, behind the empty pit, were words burned into the wall, ancient Hebrew. The team read it slowly. It said, "They shall not rise again." That was the moment everything changed. It proved the stories were more than stories. The flood wasn't just rain. It was a lock, a cleansing, a burial of something that should have never walked the earth. The Ark had never been just a boat. It was a cage, a vault built to seal away the monsters that once ruled this planet. The Nephilim, the giants, the creatures born from angels and humans. That's why the Ark had strange doors, sacred symbols, and something alive inside it, to keep the evil locked away. And now, that lock was broken. Back at the base, fear spread like wildfire. Some packed their things and left that night. They couldn't stay, couldn't breathe the air near that place. The scientists argued about what to do next. Keep going, or stop before it was too late. The faithful dropped to their knees and prayed. The military sent drones, and then the sky over the mountain lit up. Strange lights, circles and flashes. Things that moved, then disappeared. For the first time, everyone there saw the truth. The Ark wasn't just made for Noah's time, it was meant for now. A warning left in stone. The last room had shown them too much. But the worst part? The door was still open. The seal is broken. The team came back to the surface, but they weren't the same as before. Their suits were checked for radiation, and every reading was a little higher than normal. Nobody talked, not on the ride up, not for hours after. They just sat in silence, staring off, like something had changed deep inside them. Above the ground, the military didn't waste time. Soldiers made the security zone tighter. Satellites were turned toward the site. The Turkish government ordered a no-fly zone around the area. What had started as a regular science dig was now locked down, like it was some kind of threat to the whole world. Even though they closed the hidden chamber under the Ark again, the damage was already done. The door had been opened and something had changed. A few days later, small earthquakes began shaking the valley. They weren't strong, but every single one started under the site. Machines around the Durupuna formation picked up strange signals, little pulses that came every few minutes. They weren't random. They followed a pattern, the same beat over and over, like a message trying to be heard. Scientists couldn't figure out what it meant. Inside the forbidden room, the strange crystal sphere kept spinning. The color of its light had changed. It used to shine blue. Now it glowed red. Every day, the room got a little hotter. Cameras still inside the chamber showed movement in the shadows, but no one was supposed to be in there. Word of the discovery spread fast. News channels showed it for a week, but then all the stories were gone. Videos were taken down. Headlines disappeared. Only small websites and a few brave researchers kept trying to figure it out. And what they found scared them. Old scrolls from the Dead Sea talked about something called the Heart of Fire. It was described as a powerful object, hidden after a great flood, guarded by angels. The scrolls warned that if it was disturbed, it would awaken something ancient, something that had once fallen from the heavens. In the Bible, the flood was told as a punishment, but older writings near Mount Ararat said something more. The flood wasn't just about cleaning the world, it was about locking something away. The beings frozen in the glass chambers under the ark weren't animals. They weren't people. They didn't belong to the world we know now. They came from a time before the earth was set in order. That deep, twisting bone pit under the ark wasn't just a grave. It was a prison. Later, the team tried to close the door again, but they couldn't. The huge stone slabs had cracked. The strange machine inside, the one that moved when the young woman touched it, was dead. The door stayed halfway open and the air around it turned ice cold. Animals ran from the woods nearby. Birds vanished from the skies. Villagers close to the site started talking about lights in the hills and sounds in the night, long, low noises, like giant horns blowing from inside the mountain. One last message was translated by language experts from an old tablet found near the bloody stone. It said, "What was drowned shall rise when fire meets stone. The end returns where the beginning was born." Nobody knew what that meant until a satellite showed something strange. Heat patterns were rising under the ark. Shapes underground were moving. One radar picture showed lines reaching down into the earth. They looked like roots, but they weren't roots. They were lines, thin like veins or maybe wires, all coming from the spinning crystal. It was sending something out. Some scientists believed it was a beacon, a signal, but a signal to what? That was the part no one could answer. Then, around the world, strange things started happening. Volcanoes near fault lines started to wake up. Small earthquakes hit places like South America and even Antarctica. People who watched the sky began to notice odd blinking lights near stars that weren't known for changing. A few astronomers even picked up soft, regular signals from deep space. When they checked the timing, the signals matched the same pulse found under the ark. Something out there had answered back. At the dig site, the original team was removed. A private security company moved in. After that, no more updates came out. Except one. It was a broken radio message from a technician who stayed behind. The voice was shaky and full of static, but one part came through clear. The seals were real. The warnings were real. It's not just a boat. It's a gate. The recording ended. No one ever saw that technician again. Today, nobody is allowed within 5 miles of the Durupanar site. Officials say it's to protect the environment. But locals tell a different story. They say lights still glow from the ridge. They say sometimes, late at night, you can hear chanting coming from inside the mountain. People once thought Noah's Ark was just an old boat filled with animals. But this was something far bigger. It wasn't just about wood or history. It was about a secret buried deep under the earth. The truth was, the flood hadn't only been sent to wash things clean. It had been a fight, a final act of war to lock something away. Something ancient, something twisted, something that was never meant to rise again. But what if the flood wasn't meant to save us, but to seal something away? Smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.